It's YNK, so since I stole all of Thorin's gigs, at the very least, what you guys can do is subscribe to his YouTube channel, so go on and do it right now.
Things can look a little muddy in the betting world, and it can be hard to spot the best site to go to. But I'm a man who knows where to go. Esports pools. Pleasant and professional as the spa I was just in myself. They have in-play betting, where you can actually bet as the rounds go on. They offer you different options. Now, Virtus.Pro, changing out Taz, by the way, also probably, and as they alluded to, probably needed to change another player, maybe even rehaul the whole concept of the team, comes on the back of months and months of poor performances by the team. And this is a team where fans and the players themselves have been massively hesitant for them to change players, to break up that lineup, because they are a legendary lineup. So we've had people during the time they were underperforming now bemoaning the fact that they're no longer a top team, because they were a team with an amazing legacy and who made for a lot of great matchups and who, by sticking together, showed us something different about team play and the ability to overcome obstacles. And obviously people are a bit upset because it's the end of the story for that five-man lineup. And so, yeah, there's a feeling about that I wish this wasn't the case. I wish it could be like the old days. I wish there was a way to overcome another final obstacle, as it were. But you know what? Don't weep for Virtus.Pro. So let's address all these points. So first of all, the months and months of poor performances added to mini slumps in the past. The most logical solution to fixing that poor performance and bringing about good performances, which we want to see, is to make roster moves. Because at the end of the day, yes, if I offered you the original Virtus.Pro lineup having good performances versus a new Virtus.Pro lineup having good performances, you might say, I prefer the original. That's not what's on offer. What's on offer is the original Virtus.Pro lineup having the worst performances imaginable versus new Virtus.Pro lineups that in the future could have good performances, much better than the old one, and at the end, that is, obviously, and perhaps getting back to the level or superseding even what the old original Virtus.Pro lineup was able to accomplish. So obviously you'd choose the latter. Then you've got to take in mind that they'd already taken the concept of having that core five to the absolute limit, the zenith of what's possible to do with one five-man lineup in professional Counter-Strike. It's actually amazing to me that they did keep it together for so long and that they did keep coming back to the top. That is, to me, one of the miracles of esports history, that they did it. Congrats to them for accomplishing something so incredible. But the amazing thing was that they continued to be able to come back to the top, and that they continued to be able to sustain themselves and replenish themselves and reinvent themselves in terms of the roles and get back to the top again. That's the amazing part. The amazing part is not that it failed in the end and eventually became really terrible, and when they rode it to into the ground completely yielded no results whatsoever. Not least because, since they always came back to the top, if they'd have ever come back with any reasonable level, like if they'd have gotten to like a solid top 6 or top 4 again, they probably never would make changes. So logically, to get to a position where they have to eventually make changes, they're going to have gone to the very end and had all the wheels fall off, as it were. Then you've got to consider, okay, because Virtus.Pro's never changed players, it feels like, oh, it's sacrilegious, it's blasphemous to change players in Virtus.Pro. Why is that? That's just that's something they created. Every other team has made changes and does make changes. Every top-level team that had any significance on history makes changes. It's just a fact of the industry and the way actually sports teams work. So it was never going to last forever anyway. At some point it was going to end. They already got an amazing 5-year run of it. I think that's pretty incredible. It was going to change eventually. Then you've got to add in that to make an improvement, the most logical change was to make a roster move, is to bring in other players who aren't part of the problem before and who have positives and upsides to bring in potential that is yet unrealized. Was, Virtus.Pro's players had no real potential because we've already seen all that they're capable of. There's no sort of unveiled, there's nothing to be discovered about Bialy or Pasha that we don't yet know. Because if they were, they'd probably have made that change already in order to fix the team and bring them back to the top again. Another reason you shouldn't be weeping is, let's be real here, nobody in the team died. Just the lineup changed. And actually it changed by one player. They still got a core 4 players that they can stick with. And even if they kick another player, they'll still have a core 3 and we'll still have a link to the past of the great things they've done. Everyone can look back fondly and say, oh, Neo and Taz, the incredible things they accomplished in 1.6. Yeah, that's 2 players. You go back to when people say like 15 years ago, yeah, they weren't playing with all the Golden Five players then. Okay, go back to the Golden Five, that's 2006 on, so like just over 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Even at that point in time, okay, they changed out those players to come and become Virtus.Pro and CSGO. If they'd have never broken that that Golden Five lineup up, first of all, they would have never won 2 more majors afterwards. Secondly, they never would have been the best team in the world at the end of 2011. And thirdly, you would have never gotten Virtus.Pro in CSGO and all the amazing things they accomplished. Because think about it, they had to kick out Cuban and Lord in CSGO because it wasn't going well for them in the first sort of half a year to 9 months of CSGO. They kicked those guys out. A few months later, they made what's now the Virtus.Pro 5-man lineup and accomplished great things by being willing to make the hard choices and cut out members of a legendary lineup that we all wanted to see continue competing, but couldn't because the results were not there. So they've already done it before, and that has been a major catalyst for change. So they can create a new legacy in doing so. So you know what? Yeah, I get it. They were a legendary team. They were amazing, but we can't go back in time, which is the key point here. Like, what? Am I not sad that they've disbanded because I think they should disband the lineup and should change players? Obviously not. What I'm sad is that, because by the way, I'm not sad that they've disbanded the lineup. What I'm sad about is that they can't play at a world-class level anymore. That's what I want to see, not them just have the lineup together and be terrible. But you know what? There's plenty of other things to be said about. To be said about the fact that Fnatic with Dennis, which went to shit when they brought the lineup back together after wasting what could have been when they made that God-sent Fnatic swap in the first place. Sad that NIP is a fucking semi-joke at this point in time and need like miracle performances to do anything of note. Or how about the fact that legendary players, Existence, Happy, are now just wallowing away, doing nothing with their careers. This isn't cool. Sean Gares is just wasting his time over in NA, while all these NA teams, some of them need an in-game leader or need some kind of impact that could bring them up to another level. None of that, though, has anything to do with the necessity and the efficacy of making key roster moves right now in a team like Virtus.Pro. Teams like Virtus.Pro and NIP in terms of their core kept those particular groups of players together way too long. As a result, they missed potential championships in exchange for, in terms of Virtus.Pro, coming back to a very good level but often not winning, and in terms of Virtus and NIP, just occasionally having one-off great runs and otherwise not being that relevant internationally. Virtus.Pro is a team that made the semi-finals of 7 majors, and how many titles do they have? 1. Now, you know what? They absolutely could have had a second one. I think they could have had the E-League Atlanta one. You know what? If you want to go further than that, I actually think if they'd have beaten XSK Gaming, ESL1 Cologne, they would have won that one. So, okay, there's 3. I also suspect that they might have won if they'd beaten Fnatic at ESL1 Katowice 2015 when they played an IP in the final. That would have been a great matchup. Would have been good. So there's maybe 4. The point is, yeah, they could have done these things, but they didn't though. They got into position 2 again and again, and they didn't. In fact, actually, if you look at the logic of them making the most semis, Virtus.Pro is basically the best team to ever play Counter-Strike at not winning majors once you're already in the top 4. They actually proved that they couldn't win more majors, really. I mean, they could have, in as much as they could have gone, there's only a few things had to go differently, but they didn't. Whereas, you know what? We have no idea what a reformulated Virtus.Pro could have done a year ago, 2 years ago. We have no idea what would have happened if they brought through a Mihu or a Mouse or a Sparrow at some other point in history, or an Innocent to be a support player. We don't know what might have happened at that point in time. Might have been 3 or 4 majors in the bag right now. Obviously, that's the most optimistic possible scenario. They may have had their own era where they were successful overall. Because that's the thing about Virtus.Pro. How could a team so legendary never really have a period where they had an era? Never really had a period where they were the clear number 1. They were number 1 ranked towards the end of 2016. But that actually, for me, shows that as good as that lineup was, as legendary as that lineup, it had run its course. Because you see at the end of 2016, they're the number 1 team for a lot of that period. They're the ones in the semis and the final all the time. They win E-League, and then beyond that, they win DreamHack Bucharest, and that's basically it. Otherwise, it's them handing over championships to other people. The Na'Vi with Simple, the Dignitas lineup of MSL, they're the ones handing these titles to people, giving up that easiest side of the bracket and not going to the E-League Season 2 final. This should have been where they just dominated in yes, a weaker era, in the whatever the parity era, or whatever you want to call it, the uncertainty era, but they didn't. They actually won very few titles despite all those semis and all those finals. Then you got to add in that whole like friendship angle, like, oh, they were friends, man. That was so overplayed all throughout time. I mean, I've known some of these guys. I've known a lot of the Polish teams over the years, the top ones that they were parts of. They were very rarely groups of friends. There might be cliques of friends, 2 guys here like each other, 3 guys here like each other, these 2 like each other and these 2 like each other, but one of the 2 pairs hates the other guy. That's just the way it is. And I actually respect that in a working relationship, they could overcome that and succeed. So the angle that they were friends, like, yes, I get it. Obviously, if you can succeed and play with people you like and are friendly with, yeah, that's the ultimate. That's cool. That's obviously what you dream of having. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's worthless if you're playing with your friends and people you like, but you're not succeeding. The ultimate goal in the video game is succeed. That's what being a professional player is about. If you want to go and play for fun, go play for fun. Be a streamer. Don't do that if you want to be a professional player, though. You've got to make those tough choices, the professional business moves to stay on top and to have the resources to be a top player and a top talent and not waste, if you're the bad teammate, not waste other people's talent and other people's time when they could accomplish more. Then you've got to look at the fact that I actually thought Virtus.Pro themselves, in actually trying to go one step further than the friendship analogy, inadvertently gave us the best analogy for them as a team, which is they called themselves brothers. They didn't call themselves friends. Well, that's a great analogy, isn't it? Because, you know what, yeah, it's great if you have a brother who's also your friend, but not necessarily always the case, is it? No, you can have a brother who just happened to be someone in your family, and yeah, you have a level of affection that's different than a friend, and you'll always stand by them, and you'll be loyal, and when they need you, you'll be there. But that doesn't mean you want to be around them all the time. Doesn't mean you like them that much. Doesn't mean you have that much in common with them. So actually the brother analogy, I think, is a better one than the friend one. And yeah, they were for a while. But you know what? At this point in time, you have to cut out your brother because in this analogy, your brother's like a drug addict or ruining all the family business or just incompetent at what he's doing. You know, this is why they always say you don't make businesses with friends and family, because you get into these scenarios where you like the guy or you want the guy to succeed, but he's fucking up your business. And if he wasn't your brother or your friend, you'd just cut him instantly. And eventually you have to anyway because he's fucking the whole business up, or you let the whole business tank. And that's obviously not a reasonable option, is it? I actually think there's a scenario involved in this. While yes, I will give it to Virtus.Pro that they made the lineup last longer than anyone else in terms of being a good lineup and returning to the top. And I don't know how they did it, and fair credit to them for being able to do it. But they are the exception to the rule that you cannot make roster moves and still continue to get back to the top again. There's a great story anecdote where Jimmy Johnson, the guy who built like the Dallas Cowboys dynasty of the early 90s, said to Bill Belichick, who obviously built the amazing Patriots teams of the 2010s to the 2000s to the 2010s now. He said to him, he's on like a boat in this series, a really sick series actually called A Football Life. And he says to him that it's better to cut a player a year early than a year late. Now, the reason he's saying that is not because you don't like the player anymore, the player can't give you anything. It's because when you want to keep having a chance to win championships, you have to build really good teams every year. And so to do so, you have to look, this guy's going to go off the boil next year. Better to cut him now and start replacing him for the future than wait till he goes off the boil and have that season just be a waste completely. That's what these teams, NIP and especially Virtus.Pro, refuse to do. And as a result, they actually have not got that many championships out there. I know you people are going to say, well, but they've got a few championships, and because of NIP, they've had some amazing runs. Yeah, NIP don't have the placings to back up those runs, and Virtus.Pro have all the runs, the placings rather, and not really the championships. So neither team really proved me wrong on that particular respect. They just did one aspect of success, but not the other in their own respective sense. So the cool thing about Virtus.Pro changing their team, and this is why you don't weep for them, because first of all, you don't weep for them because their greatness is in the past, and it will always be there. There's nothing can happen now that will change how amazing they were in the past. It's like that great anecdote rather, that Raymond Chandler, the classic detective story author, said, where he said that someone had made a movie out of one of his books, and someone said something like, oh, they've ruined that book, and he was like, no, they haven't. It's right there on the shelf. That's the whole point. That's not being changed. They've done something else different later that might be bad. That has nothing to do with his book. His book's just as good as it ever was. In fact, there's a great quote as well that says, like, Homer is as fresh today, whereas the newspaper is old as soon as it comes out, or something like that. It's the same exact scenario. So what's great now about Virtus.Pro changing their team, why I don't weep, why I rejoice, is because now they can start a new Virtus.Pro legacy, just like all the teams before them. I mean, you think of a team like SK Gaming. This is a prime example of why you don't stick with a good team, but one that doesn't win. They were top 4 every event with FNX after their era ended, but they weren't winning any of those events, and there was real reasons why they weren't, and they were always just losing the matches, but there was a reason as to why they were. So when they changed, well, guess what? We don't look back now and go, I missed the FNX era, because we know now he had some problems, and he was one of the main issues in that team. And we look at what happened since. They had Phelps. They won all those amazing tournaments. They looked like they were going to make their own era if they'd have won that major at PGL Krakow. Then you look with Bolts, winning 3 of the first 4 tournaments, being able to actually dominate the number 1 ranked team, FaZe, and stop FaZe having their own era. This is all amazing shit. You look at what happened to someone like Fur. He was able to emerge as a superstar player as a result of FNX being removed and them having to reformulate the team. That could happen for another player in a Virtus.Pro in other teams. Maybe someone like Bialy, maybe someone like Pasha changes up their role and as a result is able to change up what they do, and maybe they can create a new individual legacy for themselves and they get a chance to be on top, which sometimes doesn't happen when you keep the same lineup together and you have to cover the same person's weaknesses and emphasize the same person's strengths. So there's no point weeping for Virtus.Pro. They've had more than their share of an amazing career as a 5-man unit. Now it's time for some of them, we don't know how many, 4, 3, we'll see, to go on and do something new, and for the others to go and create something new elsewhere. Maybe it won't be a world championship team, but maybe they'll bring up new Polish talents, they'll do something on a lower level, but accomplish greatness in their own rights. This video was supported by Dean Tanglis, Michael Allaire, Andreas Westerlund, Alex Adams, Gman, Twch, Jerky's Minion, Anthony, TGreb, Jake Petrucci, Yordan Tsenkov, Daniel Yordanov. Want to get exclusive teasers for my upcoming work? Submit questions for me or make suggestions for my content? Become a part of the ever-growing Scrilluminati via Patreon link in the description box below.